asked? My head was I was arguing and multitasking, and I had to sign on. So, all right, no problem. All right, so we left off yesterday at the bottom. So I'll always be aware of Gemaras with lots of long Rashis. We'll soon see in the anyway. Yeah. Today's Daf Mem Gimel, so we're at the bottom of Mem Beis Mem Beis.
Gimel.
So all right. So yesterday we discussed the case. We were talking about that there was a payment for kofar, but that it doesn't go to. So we were differentiated because that goes to her after she, by definition, she dies and she's no longer married, and therefore that payment really goes to her yorshim, does not go to the husband, because he says damages that the nezikin, those goes to the husband, but things that are not are yours, they come afterwards. So Gemara says nezikin lo amar Rabbi Kiva, and by nezikin, that and Rabbi Kiva was the one who said. I'm just going back a couple lines at the top. It says Mikan Shabal Yorish Asisho, right? He says nezikin lo amar Rabbi Kiva that he died. Lied, but time we learn in the Brisa it says Hika Isha the Yasul Adal. So the pasuk over there says, right, hit the pregnant woman and their fetus dies, right? So the woman is paid for her pain and her damage. And we'll soon see the pasuk, learn after the pasuk, that the payment for the fetus goes to the father, to the husband. Ein habal, if the baal is not alive, no, you say liyarshem, you give to his descendants, his children. Ein isha, if the woman is not around, no senes, right? You think it goes, damages go to the husband. The senes liyarsha, right? It's different. It goes to her. It doesn't go to her husband, right? The damages that if she dies subsequently to this, it goes to her yarshim. It doesn't. Her pain and suffering, her nezikin during the time of her marriage do not go to her husband, right? And haisa shicham nishachra. And let's say in theory, this pregnant woman who was hit and miscarried, she was recently a freed slave, and therefore there is no father, right? There is a halachic father to this child, right? Or Gioiras, or if she was Geras and Zacha, then the person who hit her, basically there's no claimant against him. He doesn't have to go ahead and pay the money because there's no one to go ahead and pay. There is no father to it. So nevertheless, what do you see from here? You see that the damages don't go to the husband, the can go to Yarsha. So Marabba Grusha, excuse me. Now we're talking about a case of where she is a Grusha. She was divorced at the time. So therefore, therefore is divorced. Therefore, it does not go to the husband. It goes to her children. Somebody say Grusha Nami. So I understand why is it Grusha? So you're telling me a woman is pregnant. There's the father, right? She gets divorced. Okay, she's hit and she miscarries. So the payment goes to the father. Why don't you give it to her, or at least split it, right? So Yushanami, Tiflik, but maybe others, right? Here in America, it's opposite, right? In America, there's nothing to do with the father, right? But at least over here, right, the 50-50. So Papa, Hatara Zaksa, the Mevlados Labal, right? That the Torah actually gives the rights to the Mevlados to the husband. Now, Filu Bala Business, maybe it was Bala Business, they weren't married. So my time was the reason. The Pasuk says, Kashir Yashi's a love, Baal Haisha. It says there, Baal Haisha. Notice that the payment of the Vlados go to the Bala Isha, which is the father of the fetus.
So whether she's divorced or not, it would still go to
the father gets the Dmei Vlados, and if he died, goes to his Yorshim, and the pain and suffering go to her, right? And if she died, right? So we're saying that if she died, then it goes to her husband. But if she was divorced, then, which is the case the Brisa is speaking, it will go to her yarshim, and not go to the husband at all. Why don't we talk about a case that we're establishing a case according to rabbis? We'll soon see when the Beis Din went ahead and they took the case, they took the money ready. In other words, they collected kesa from her, and according to Nachman, when they collected karka from her, and that's why it goes to her yorshim, and it does not go to the husband. Why? What are you talking about? Gavu karka. So we have another case where normally the son gets pishnayim, things that are the father in the father's possession. But what about things that come after, perhaps the father it was deceased, right? So does the bechor get pishnayim in such a case there? So gavu karka yeshlo, right? So if we're talking about where they go ahead and collect land, right? So then that land he gets double, right? But however, go most. But if it's just cash, then he does not get pishnayim. All right, Rav Nachman says the opposite. Amar gavu mos. If they go ahead and collect cash, then yeshlo gavu karka. But there's land, then ain't he does not get the portion. That only comes afterwards. So why are we talking about a case over there where we see that those are considered to be something that are not actually collected, right? And therefore, these are something that's only, and therefore it's something that it's not really in the estate yet, and therefore that's the case where the kids will get it. Somebody say, "Hani mili l'bnei mamarava." I'll leave it to Rabbanan. That was only that machlekes over there is only according to the Rabbanan that say that he isn't a b'shnayim. So Kikami Hacha Rebbe, we're talking about Rebbe, who says that anything that come afterwards would go to the husband. So therefore, that's only according to the Rabbanan. But according to Rebbe, that even things that come afterwards would go to the husband. Therefore, the husband really should be the one getting the tsar and the damage that was done to her while she was a pregnant woman, and then she subsequently died later on, nothing to do with the fact that she was at that point. But the reason why the husband doesn't get it, really he would, according to Rebbe, he would get it, even if it was cash or land that was seized by the courts for her, they would still get it. So therefore, we must be talking about a case of where the woman was a grusha, was divorced, and that's the reason why the husband doesn't get it, and her children get it. Fine. 2 dots. A third of the way down on Mem Gimel Meraf. Rabbi Shimon Lakish. Sure, shehemis esa eved shelo b'kavan. All right, so now we got to remember 2 things. Now, there's 2 categories. There's tam and muad. Now, remember, tam and muad is a case. A muad obviously is done 3 times and is put, and it's always intended. A tam is something that does it b'kavana. Right, intended to go ahead and damage. It was just the first time doing it. It was a first-time offender. Okay, so that is one scenario. We have to remember that part. There's tam and muad, but both of those are with kavana, right? It intends to gore a person, right, and he kills them, right? So the muad pays kofir, the tam does not because it was a first-time offense. But either way, the animal is put to death, right? Because it did a kavana.
The tam paying katzin nezek,
which, and in the general case, yeah. Right, but we're talking about killing somebody, kofar, right? So there's no chazi kofar, right?
Right.
Now, that's killing a person. Now, there's another thing, right? What about if the animal kills unintentionally, shalom b'kavan, right? So what goes on over there, right? So, I'm sorry. You can see the animal was trying to gore a car. The guy's brand new BMW just took off the lot. And it was running at the car, and he ran to stay in front. He said, "Stop!" To the bull, and then he got killed. So obviously, he was going to ram the car, and then he got himself in the way. So it was shalom b'kavana, or guy was trying to protect his pet, and then the animal gored him instead of the dog that was intended target. Now, so shor shem he says eved shalom b'kavana. Pater mishleishim shkalim. So normally, if an animal intends to go ahead and kill an eved, right? The owner has to pay 30 shkalim. Mm-hmm. So in this case, it was done shalom b'kavan without intending. So patim is you don't have to pay. The pasuk says kesef shleishim shkalim yitin la'adanav. That's sure you suck. So it says there, pay 30 shkalim to the slave's master, and the shore is stoned. You kill the animal. Right, so kolzman sheshar b'skilo habalim shlashim shkalim. So whenever you go ahead and kill the animal, when do you kill the animal? When it's done intentionally. So intentional, since the animal is killed, then you go ahead and you pay the 30 shkalim. However, eina shor b'skila. But if the animal is not going ahead and is not stoned, i.e., because it's done by kavara, and habalim shlashim shkalim, then the owners do not have to go ahead and pay the 30 shkalim. And Amar Rabba, and Rabba says similarly. Sure, Shehemis ben Chorin, right? Now, a similar case, but instead of goring a slave and killing this Canaanite slave, right? It's Eved Canani. When the animal in that case is put to death, and you have to pay the master 30. In the case of if you go a ben chorin, right, a regular person, so such a case the animal is put to death, and you make a kofar payment. Now, so shor shemis ben chorin shelo b'kavana pater mikayfer, right? You're pater from making kofar in this case, right? If it did a shelo b'kavana, shinamar, the pasuk says hashor yisakav agam balav yumas in kofar yushas alav. So the pasuk says you go ahead and stone the animal, and the owner shall go ahead and pay a kofar. So kol's mancha shor b'skila. Anytime the animal is put to death, i.e. b'kavana balam misham kofar, then the owner goes ahead and pays kofar for killing this other free person. Ein shor b'skila. But if the animal did it unintentionally, therefore you do not go ahead and kill the animal. Ein balam misham kofar. Then you don't go ahead and pay kofar. Fine. Eisave. Abaye as a kasha. Hemis shori es ploni. O shoro shel ploni. A person goes ahead and says, I think Mishnah Ksubas. So it says, a person says, my shore killed, right, gored so and so, right? He killed so and so. Hemis shor es ploni. Or a shor shel ploni. Or my animal gored and killed so and so's ox. Hareze mishalim al piatzma. He goes ahead and is mishalim al piatzma. He is obligated to go ahead and pay. If my ox kills that person, or if my ox goes, now remember, if I go ahead and testify that my ox killed, is that my animal put to death? It's not. Okay, it's not put to death. But it says over there, hareze mishalim al piatzma. You go ahead and you have to pay in this case. So my lav, what do you pay? What are we talking about paying? So my lav kofar. Are we not talking about the kofar payment? In other words, that if I say my animal killed Bob, right? So I got to pay kofar to Bob's family, right? So I understand. So I'm sorry, kofar is a muad, right? But so the question is, wait, the animal's not being killed because there's no two witnesses. So you just said when the animal's killed, that's when there's kofar. When the animal's not killed, there's no kofar. But what about this case, right? Harei zemashalim, according to there. So my lab kofar. Are we talking about kofar? Lo damer. All right, new introduction, right? Headline. Now there's another payment that's going on here, right? There's now, and it's very similar. Now there is a kofar payment, but let's say I'm pater from kofar, right? So do I pay anything? My ox killed so and so, right? So he was worth $1 million. So I caused damage to the family, $1 million. So there's you actually do go ahead and pay. You pay dummim, you pay damages. Just like if my ox goes ahead and breaks his window, I have to go ahead and pay. So too, if my ox goes ahead and breaks his head and kills him, right? I have to go ahead and pay for damages. It's not a kofar. It's not a kofar payment. It's not an atonement payment, but it's a mammon payment. I have to pay for damages, right? And they're very similar in concept, but there are a few nafkamis. There's a whole God's mahalof in terms of the nafkamis, but one over here is lamaisa. If a person doesn't have money, right? He's bankrupt, so if he owes money, but he doesn't have it, right? As opposed to if he owed it's kofar, it's atonement, so the guy needs to go ahead and borrow, do whatever he is in order to get the kapara. So there's different nafkamis whether it is, but over here we're talking about, no, he's obligated not to pay kofar, but to pay damages. He's obligated to pay dummim. No, it would even be like that, right? Even be in that case, right? So it's just like in town be nezek, it would be half damages, right? So he said, "So my love cover low dumb." So you dumbim. What I say? You're talking about dumb. So let's look at the save. There's hey mishari is avdo shalploni. If my ox went out and killed someone's eved, he does not go ahead and pay. The dumbim. I understand if I say I caused damage, I killed his slave. Now let's say so I'm not paying the regular 30 knas. Let's say the slave is worth 5 shkalim, so I should pay 5 shkalim, right? I should pay the damage, right? So if dam in mamaylo, samarle yachin l'shinuya l'cha reisha dam v'seva knas. Really, I can tell you like this: the reisha is talking about dam that he pays. The sefer says he's pater. Why? Because he's modeh b'knas. The person's modeh b'knas is pater from paying, and that's why he's pater from paying the 30 shkalim. And I can say it's 2 different cases. However, mihu shanuya dechigal. I don't want to give you a doichak teretz. And therefore, to say, okay, one's talking about the knas and the other one's talking about dumb. It's two different things. No, I'll give you another theory. So either really both of them are dumb. Really, both are talking about damages. And the Reisha says, in the case you killed a person, you're chayiv for you're chayiv. And the other case with the eved, you're pater. So what's the chilik? What's the difference in the cases? So turn the page. So miu ben charim mishalim kafir abiyatzmo. So it's like this. A ben charim who does go ahead and be mishalim kafir abiyatzmo. Now, even though remember a person's moeded by knas, he's pater, but a person's moeded by kofir, then he is chayiv to make such a payment. Now, so a person who admits, and what's the case of there? What's the person's case of admits such a case? The asusad the kato. Two people come and they testify. We saw this animal intentionally gore that human, kill Bob. However, but they don't know whether he's a tam or muad. And then the owner says, "This is not the first time. This is the third time actually, right?" So the owner said it. So now, who's the one who makes the animal muad? The owner. Who's the one that made now is the animal subject to being killed? Yes, because two people testified that we saw this animal gore intentionally. So whether or not it was the first or third time, it doesn't make a difference. The animal is killed, and by the owner's admission, he now pays kofar. So you actually have the two of them working together in terms of the testimony on the animal and the owner saying it's a muad. The mishalim kofar al piyatzma. In such a case, he pays mishalim kofar al piyatzma. So heicha the leked in the shanda, but if there are no witnesses in this case, then he doesn't pay kofar. Rather, he only pays daman. He only pays damages. In other words, whatever damage he caused to the family of the deceased. And heicha, and gabi eved, but in case of an eved, she'ein mishalim knas al piyatzma, when he cannot go ahead and pay asa, then what's that case? The two witnesses came and they say, hey, we saw this animal go ahead and gore an eved, and they don't know if he's a tam or muad. And the owner says this is the third time he actually gored somebody. So now he killed this eved. So what's the penalty for that? It's a knas. Knas and mishalim al piyatzma, right? So therefore, the lo mishalim knas al piyatzma. So too, heichad l'akeidim. So therefore, if there's no witnesses there, lo mishalim dami. You don't go ahead and pay the damages. So since I would have paid kofar, so when I don't pay kofar, I pay damages. But since I wouldn't have paid knas, so therefore I don't go ahead and pay for the damages. So Mason, yeah.
The owner of the shore has to come to Beis Din first and testify that my shore killed something.
Well, that was that case, right? Well, in that case over there, in other words, that is the effect. In other words, since we have it theoretical, if witnesses testified that we saw the animal gore, we just don't know if it was tam and muad, and he admits, right, that it was a muad.
Subsequent.
Right. So then in that case, he would pay knas. So that tells us what the halacha would be based on that if he comes to Beis Din on his own and says, my ox killed. Since you could have paid kofar on your own, therefore, you're going to go ahead and pay damim on your own. But in the case of the slave, where your admission to being a muad would not charge you 30 shkalim, therefore you don't pay damages for 30 shkalim. But however, so whatever case that you're chayiv for a ben chorin, i.e. the kofar payment, or we'll soon see what that is, right? Then you're also chayiv in the same exact case if instead of killing a regular person, it killed an eved. If I'm chayiv for paying this guy's kofar, then I'm chayiv to pay the 30 shkalim. So what does it mean? Ben kofar, ben b'misa, right? Whether the death of the animal or the kofar. So kofar, the eved mi'ika. Is there such thing as kofar by eved? There's no such thing as kofar by eved. What does it mean? The same thing with kofar when it comes to an eved or ben charin. So where it says lo, we're talking about a case of damim. We're talking about a case of damim. So you see over here, so that a case of damim, it's not the same case. In other words, if you're chayiv by a ben charin, you should be chayiv to pay if you're chayiv the damages by a ben charin, you should be chayiv by the damages to pay in the case of the eved. So Gemara says, some say he asked the kashan, but he answered himself. And some say Rabba answered him. So no, you have to say like this: Kol shechayiv ben chayrin b'kavana al pi edim kaifer. So anytime you have, right, in the case of a ben chorin, right, that if it was done, that the witnesses testify that it was done with kavana, right? And he pays kofir. So chayiv eved kanas. Then he's chayiv in the case of the eved with the kanas. However, however, any case of where that if it would go ahead and kill a person, now then it was testified that it was unintentional. So chayiv eved shelo b'kavana al pi edim damim. So in such a case, the eved would be chayiv, right? Without kavana al pi edim damim. Only in that case. So in other words, only in the case of where they're each going ahead, and so only in the case of where shelo b'kavana, that's the case of where you pay damim. But if it was with kavana, in the case of the eved, he would not pay the 30 shkal. So Amalei Rava ihachi, if that's the case. So isha shelo b'kavana al pi edim l'shalim damim. Well, let's say like this: a person sets a fire, and unintentionally, right? He had a fire, and unintentionally, right? He a menorah caught fire, but that might even be einus, right? So but we say. In other words, he intended to make a fire. He just didn't intend it for it to go ahead and kill a person, right? So we say there that's ihachi isha shelo b'kavan al pi edim l'shalim damim. In such a case, if it's unintentional, you're saying unintentional killing an ox, you have to go ahead and pay for damages. So too, let's say the same thing by a fire. You start a fire and you kill someone, you should pay for damages. Gemara says, who says you don't go ahead and pay it? So if you want to say, okay, here's the proof from this Mishnah. A person goes ahead, and it's almost like a joke, right? Somebody has a haystack, a goat, and a slave, right? So in the case of there, the goat was tied, and the eved was not tied to the haystack, and he set the haystack on fire. The nisrafimo chayiv. He's chayiv to pay for damages, and he's patur from paying anything because the eved could have gotten away. Why didn't the eved run away? He didn't. So it's not a me that the eved died. So therefore, he's chayiv to pay for the haystack. However, eved if the eved was tied to the haystack, the goat was nearby. The nisrafimo, he lights it on fire. Patur. Such a case, he's patur. So what do you see over there? Why is he? So he's patur for paying damages in this case. Here's a proof that you set a fire. You're patur for damages. So no, no, in that case a little different. Begufo shall have it over there. He actually the king over there. He actually set fire to. It wasn't that he's patur. Is that he's so chayiv? He actually set fire directly to the eved, and therefore he's chayiv misa. And therefore, since chayiv misa, therefore he's patur for payments. So therefore, that's not a proof that you don't pay for an unintentional damages for paying for unintentional. So where do we know the damages for unintentional fire? For alamiha. From this case, the Tanya will advise a chaymer be'esh mi bebor. What is a chumrah from one's fire versus one's pit? That a fire is fit to go ahead and consume things that are fit for it or not fit for it. It can damage anything, as opposed to a pit. But it doesn't mention in that Bryce over there that for fire, an unintentional fire, you also pay for damages, like as opposed to a board. It didn't say that, so it must be right that you must be your patur from such a case. So Dilma Tana Vishai. So maybe over there is leaving out other cases there. Maybe that's not the good proof. It just left it out because it left out other cases. So Rava Gufa Iboila. Rather, so don't say it was Rava was saying is definitively. Rather, it was a question for Rava. He said, Isha Shalo b'kavana, a person has a fire and unintentionally kills somebody, mi mishalim damim alo. Does he go ahead and pay for damages or not? Mi amrina, do we say Gabi Shorhu b'kavana mishalim kaifer in a case of an ox that when it gores intentionally, then he pays kofir, and therefore shalo b'kavana if it's unintentional, then mishalim dami, then he pays damages. About Isha, but his fire to b'kavana lo mishalim kofir. If I set a fire intentionally, right, and hopefully it catches on to get this right. So if you set the fire intentionally, that over the fire you're not chayiv kofir. Kofir is a case of my ox scoring, not a case of my fire. So therefore, so therefore, without kavana, I also don't pay any sort of damages because I don't pay kofir in the case of intentions. Dilmar, we say like this: Kevan the gabi shora shelo bekavana. So do we say that since by a shore without intentionally, even though there is no kofir, you do go ahead and pay damages? So do by a fire, even though with kavana you don't go ahead and pay kofir with your fire, right? Even if it's intentional because you never pay it. So shalom kavana, but if it was unintentional, maybe then you would go ahead and pay damages. and therefore they don't know the answer and take it. And he leaves it in that case as a taker. Fine. 2 dots. So one last case, so Kiyasa Rabin, Kiyasa Rav Dimi, Rav Yechran, Kaifer. It says the Kaifer. Matam Lama im Kaifer. The pasuk says im Kaifer Yishas Alav, right? So what is the word im? So the Rabbis Kaifer Shalom Kavana comes to include that you pay kofar even if your animal gored without intentions. The kofar bekavana, right? You pay just like you did intentions. So by the case of the slave, it says batam lever imevet. It says imevet. If it gores, it just could have just said evet. It says imevet. Maybe you come to the rabbis evet shalom bekavana, that unintentionally killing a slave kavet bekavana is just like that, and therefore you pay 30 shkalim there. So if you can say that's the case, so I've amaresh lakish. Reish Lakish said earlier, "Shor shehemis es ha'evet shalom bekavana patam b'shlashim shkalim." Reish Lakish said beferish earlier that it's not like that. So Amalei gavra karadnis. I understand. So okay, says the machlekes. You're bringing a kasha and Rabbi Yechon from Reish Lakish. Okay, so they argue in this matter. And Kiyas the Rabbi Rabbi Yechon Eved. It said no. It's like different. It says Eved matam lever im Eved. Why did it say im Eved? So the rabbis Eved shaloi bekavana to include an Eved shaloi bekavana. So an eved without kavana is just like an eved with kavana in that case. Reish Lakish nam. So in other words, so according to Rabbi Yechon, he learns that case. I Reish Lakish nami nema mi the eved im eved. He could have just said eved. It says im eved. Why did you learn the same thing? So he says lo. So lo darish kaifer. So he says no. He's lo darish. So kaifer nami lo darish. If that's the case, then why you shouldn't darish in the case in kaifer to always pay kofar? So why do you differentiate between kofar and pay the 30 shkalim for eved? So he says so nami lo darish. So he says lo eved im eved lo darish. Kaifer in kaifer darish. But kaifer does why? Umayishna eved im eved, right? Because lo ksiv b'makam tashlumin. When it says whatever the case of the eved, it's not talking about the actual payment. It's talking about the case of the goring animal. So therefore, it's an out of place. However, kaifer, when it says im kaifer, see when the place of where it says im kaifer, that's b'makam tashlumin. That's where we're actually talking about the payments of the kofar, and therefore we can learn from there that to include even shalom b'kavan in the case of kofar, but to include shalom b'kavan in the case of 30 shkalim by eved, that is not done because it was written out of place. It wasn't written in b'makam tashlumin. All right, we'll stop here. The 2 dots. Everybody's a little daf today. So, Hashem, everyone have a wonderful Shabbos. Wonderful.